Why was the Roman Empire so Greek, if you will? There's actually a simple explanation. Remember that when Rome was first developing, before it was really anything of note, just south of Rome, there were Greek city states that had been founded centuries before that were sophisticated, wealthy, powerful, interesting. So that is the simplest explanation for why Rome wound up being Hellenized or Greekified. The Romans looked up to these Greek neighbors just south of them who had these powerful cities that, and they looked up to their culture and all that stuff. So that is why ancient Rome wound up being so Greek influenced. Okay, there clearly were Roman criticisms of Greek culture, but for the most part, the wealthy and powerful amongst the Romans looked up to the Greeks, and even some of them even spoke Greek instead of Latin, as the Roman Republic and Empire, went on. So that's the explanation for ancient Rome. But as Rome progressed, and then it, you know, the the Roman Republic and then the Empire wound up conquering pretty much most of the Greek speaking world and absorbing it into the Roman Empire. So that's the second reason why the Roman Empire was so Greek. Because basically, the eastern half of the Roman Empire, the lingua franca was Greek. It was largely Greek influenced. A Greek influenced half of the empire. And then when the western half of the Roman Empire had fallen and disintegrated in the 5th century AD, the Roman Empire in the east, the Greek part of the Roman Empire, continued for another 1,000 years. It was weakened at various points because of certain invasions and stuff, but then it bounced back. And officially, it continued to exist as the Roman Empire for another 1,000 years. It fell in the 15th century AD when finally the Turks conquered the Roman Empire. So, this is why it's kind of interesting when you think about it. Greeks were Romans for about 1,000 years longer than any Western European. Like when Rome fell in the West in the 5th century AD, Europe descended into its Middle Age, into medieval times when there was all that feudalism, and then it later developed into monarchical intrigue and that kind of politics. Whereas in the East, the Roman Empire continued for another 1,000 years, like we said. So, it's ironic that people descended from Western Europeans somehow have the mantle of the Roman Empire by being called Latinos or something like that, like basically Latins. Even though Greeks were actual Roman citizens and subjects for another 1,000 years longer than any Western European, than any Spaniard, any Portuguese, any colonist or imperialist of Portugal or Spain. Greeks were actual Roman citizens 1,000 years longer than any of them. But they get the mantle of Rome somehow from Latino. But, in another sense, Latino is accurate because the daughter languages of Latin, the Latin part of the empire was the Western part of the empire. And that is what influenced the daughter languages of Latin to develop, like Spanish and Italian and Portuguese and Romanian and so on and so forth. So Romanian is the only language in the East that is a Romance language, that is Latin, that is a daughter language of Latin. The rest of them are in the West, basically. So in that sense, Latino is accurate. But the irony is that Greeks were Romans 1,000 years longer than any Western European or any Spaniard or so on and so forth. So it's kind of a fact of history that is sometimes overlooked by people from Western Europe or descended from Western Europeans. Greeks are actually more Roman than they could ever be. I mean, it's a historical fact. I'm not proud of empire. I'm not proud of the Roman Empire. I think empire is universally bad. I do not like empire. But I'm just talking about historical fact.